my name is Ralph and welcome back to the channel. It's my time, let's go. So I'd like to take a moment and welcome all our regular subscribers back and welcome all you new viewers that are checking out our channel. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the like button and throw me some comments and we'll see where it goes. Be sure to stick around to the end. Well, we'll give you some tips on how to actually get the transmission out of the transmission case, and it may be helpful for some of you out there that are attempting to do this. That's what it's all about, trying to help out people and trying to pass on a little bit that I know to make your life a little bit easier. All right, let's get on with it. Also, on another note, which is kind of exciting, I think by the time this video comes out, I should be at the 5,000 subscriber mark. Now, that's a big deal, as Hip tells it. Hip's at the 5,000 club, I know when Slick got there, it was a big deal for him. When Hip got there, I seen him get there. It was a huge deal for him. Hippie's such a personality, and now he's over 10,000 there and still growing, and kudos to you, Hip. Yeah, you're working hard at it. I know, working a daytime job and trying to keep the YouTube thing going on the side requires a lot of work and a lot of dedication, and more power to you to keep it up. Same as you, Slick. Now I know you're into new editing programs and such, and I think you'll find that takes even more time. And you're working a job as well and trying to support your YouTube channel at the same time. So kudos to you guys. I realize how much work it is, and I hope that a lot of the viewers out there realize that it doesn't just happen. We don't just pick up the camera and shoot it for 20 minutes and say, there you go. It's a lot of behind the scenes work and a lot of hard work for everyone. And so I hope you all appreciate that and have patience with us when things aren't just right or we don't get the shot you want. Lots of times we lose footage, and that's the way it goes. So today we're going to be looking at this 5-speed transmission, and what we're going to do is put new bearings in the trap door. The transmissions come apart for service, and it's a good time to put new bearings and rebuild the whole thing because it's been many years since it's been touched. So what we're going to do is try to look at that today. We're going to start out by showing you about the gears and just exactly what the gears are. So as we look down through our gear cluster, we have to remember where it's positioned and how it's in the motor. On here is the 5th gear, which we don't have, but I can slide one on here so that it gives you a better visual of what's really going on. So to perhaps give you a little better understanding of how the 5th gear works, we've slid a 5th gear on here so you can have a look, and we'll show you which gears are which, and that'll give you a little better explanation of maybe how the transmission works. So if we start at the top here, we look at these, and this is your 5th gear. 5th gear main shaft, 5th gear counter shaft. As we work our way down to the next ones, this is your 2nd gear. So this is the 2nd gear on your counter shaft, 2nd gear on your main shaft. As we go down to the next gear cluster down here, this is your 3rd gear setup. 3rd gear on the main shaft, 3rd gear on the counter shaft. We go down to the next one. This is actually 1st gear stuck here in the middle of the cluster, and you can see by the size of the gears that there's quite a bit of difference in them. So 4th, 1st, this is on a sliding clutch here, that's why they're not lined up. This would be your 3rd gear cluster, which is also a sliding gear. Then here we have your 2nd gear, which is sliding gear here, and the 5th gear, which is solid. So what we're going to do today is disassemble this transmission, put new bearings in the trap door, reassemble it, and get it ready to go back into the owner's bike. Okay. So first off, we can start by, of course, getting rid of our 5th gear, which would actually be in your transmission in the main bearing had you not pressed it out. This whole unit slides right out of the transmission. You just undo the trap door bolts, take off your shifting assembly, which controls your shifting, and then you can slide the transmission right out. So we'll do away with the 5th. What you're going to need for this assembly is a set of these pliers with the flats on the outside. These are grooved here, kind of corrugated so that they'll grab onto the snap rings, and you pretty well need a set of these to get them off. A prime example is this one here. So let's see if we can get it off. And we just spread it and lift it off. All of these will be replaced. So we're going to start to disassemble, and it's a good idea to lay your gears out in the position they're in to avoid any confusion as you go. So we'll start. The fifth gear, of course, like I said, is in the main shaft bearing. So we'll remove the fifth gear, counter shaft. We set that aside. Next, we'll remove this one, and it'll slide right up as well. And inside this, when you take it off, is a spacer washer. Now we want to make sure that you have this spacer washer, so it's a good idea to just put it inside your gear and set it aside. Now there's a snap ring here, and this one is very loose, in need of replacement. So we'll just spread it and lift it off, throw it away. And these are one of your bearings. Now these bearings in here are what they call a split bearing. So it just spreads like that, and you can lift it right off, and we're going to discard that as well. The next thing that has to come off, this can come right off now. So now we can remove this gear as well. We can remove this gear, and this is your main shaft gear. So like I say, set them aside, keep them in their place. As we can see, we have another snap ring in here, and this one's down in behind the shift dogs, so it can be a little bit more difficult to get out. So we'll get the snap ring out, and it's sometimes a little bit hard to get out because the fit is so close. You may have to help it a little bit with your screwdriver, and then we can lift that off and discard it. Next, this gear comes off. And on the back side of this gear is another spacer. So we make sure and keep those together. There's another split bearing here. And we'll throw that away. There's another snap ring here. We just spread it so that we can slide it over all the shafts, discard it. So we're going to leave these gears on here because we're going to use these as support when we go to press out the shafts, so as not to damage the door or anything like that. So the first thing we're going to do is press out the counter shaft, and we're going to support it here. So now we're going to support the counter shaft gear and get it ready to press out. We get a little spacer in here, and we've supported this under here, and that will support the case, and we just press out the counter shaft. There we go. We want to pay attention to this washer that's in here. This is the counter shaft washer. It's in there. So that's what we need on there. And then we'll proceed to support the small gear. So that we can press it out as well. Show you here as we press this out. There's another washer on this one. One of these washers is flat on the back, and that's for the counter shaft one, and one of these washers actually have a small step on it, and that's for the main shaft. Take that off. Remove the split bearing, and that will slide right off, and that'll make it easy to get this clip out. And there we go. Now we just got to get the clips out. And there's the other one. Gonna press these out, so we're gonna ruin the bearing, of course. That's the only way to get them out. Okay. And there we go. That takes care of that. Now we're going to put our new bearings in. We're just going to tap them down into place. Numbered side up. So now we're just going to press the bearings in. We've just tapped them in there so that they're nice and straight and even and support the plate underneath. You should be able to press that right in against the shoulder. Always press on the number side up. Let's see if I can get a short extension for that. There we go. And we'll stick our new retaining rings in. These particular little clips for it have a beveled side on the top and a flat side underneath. And the flat side goes in towards the bearing. Make sure that you're seated in the groove. There we go. And the other one. Make sure that they're locked in the groove. Again, with the beveled side up. So we've had to put our socket in underneath. And then we put it on there and we just eased it down. Now my cameras, I didn't turn them on, but that gives you the idea. We pressed them down until that one slid in there. Solid. And it should still turn nicely there. So now we're going to get set up and try to do the other one. So we'll try to get it in place this time. We're just going to slide our socket over the end. We know that it fits proper. Slide that up in there. Make sure we're in place. There we go. Both gears are set in there like they should be. Now we can go on to reassembling the transmission pieces. So we've got our gear set here out of the press, and just before we put it in the vise so we can work on it, we've put these nuts on, and with the small washer in there, and they just have to go on finger tight. They don't have to be tightened up, locked up. Now we're going to put it in the vise. So we'll get her set up in the vise like this. Some soft jaws on there. So now we'll just put a little bit of oil on our split bearings here. Spread a little bit around here. And we'll slide a split bearing down very carefully. Don't open it up any more than you have to. Then we'll take our first gear for the counter shaft. You slide it down over. There we go. Now some of these are two-piece in here, this first gear piece, and it has this and a separate shoulder piece for some of the earlier years, but these are one piece, and the bevel on this is what they talk about in the manual. The bevel is to go down with the cutout sticking up, so your next gear can engage in it. So just to put a thrust washer in there above this first one, this clip. So you put a thrust washer there, and then we'll take our main shaft. Take our main shaft, third gear I believe. Then we take another spacer ring. Okay, then we're going to put a clip on that. Small spacer down on this one. Okay, try to get a locking ring down in there. A little difficult. This can be a little fussy. Okay. Slide that down. As you can see, it just snapped right into place. And now we're locked in there. Now we have to do the same thing on this one here. Put a locking ring in on top of the spacer. Just slide her down until she snaps in. And we'll put our counter shaft third gear with the teeth sticking up. Could go either way, but this is the way we want it, with the teeth sticking up. There we go. Fourth, first, third. Then we can put our main shaft second gear on. This way, with the slot up to the top. There we go. And there we go. Now this gear moves when our fifth gear actually goes on. This can engage back and forth. And the fifth gear can only go down there so far to the spline. So we just have 4 gears on this one, and we're going to have 5 gears on this. So now we're going to put a retaining ring in here. Another one out of the package. Make sure that we got it in the groove good. Okay. Now we'll put our last ring bearing here. Okay. Then we need a spacer ring here, on top of this one. Okay. And then we'll put our countershaft second gear this way. There. Yeah. And our fifth gear last. There we go. We just have to put one more retaining ring up here. Make sure that that's snapped in and locked in there. She's a snug fit. Should slide around if it's locked in. It is snug, but you should be able to just move it ever so bit just to make sure that everything's locked in that groove. Okay, so fourth gear. First gear here, third gear, which is a sliding gear here, then we have second gear here, which is also a sliding gear, and our fifth gear here, which would be mated up to your fifth gear that's in the transmission. So that's it. You just take your time, pay attention to the split rings like these type, and the spacers that have to go in between each gear. Each of those spacers has to be there to give you the proper distance so the gear doesn't walk around. If you forget a spacer, you're going to have a gear that's walking around and it's not going to shift right at all. That's it. That looks good. And after having a mess up with first gear, you learn more about it. All right, so now when you put these into the transmission, we need to lock these gears here, and before you put the shift fork mechanism in, you can slide your gears so it'll lock up, and then you can torque those up. So when you lock them up, they should be 27 to 33 pounds, I believe is what they say, to torque these big nuts, and don't forget the spacer that's in there. So this will be ready to slide in the transmission now. So I hope you enjoyed that video on how to rebuild your tranny here. A lot of guys think there's a lot more to it than there is, and getting it out of the bike is the issue a lot of times, but they don't realize that the whole trapdoor assembly slides right out. So by taking the 4 screws off the top of your lid and taking 4 more screws out and lifting that shift mechanism out, then you'll be able to pull the transmission out. Only if you have the race on here for your primary bearing, the race will have to come off this before you can pull it out. But it's a nice thing about the 5 speeds, it's a nice easy swap compared to having to fit everything in and everything else with the 4 speeds. They keep this pretty well straightforward. So we're good. Now I'm working on one of my projects here, and I got a 5-speed in there, and I don't have it apart, but unfortunately the shift lever assembly is out and the whole shift drum and everything. But I'm going to try to show you how easy it is to take those out, and you can fill in the blanks. I'll try and show you some drawings and maybe give you a better idea of where I'm going with it. But getting the 5-speed assembly out is pretty simple, all things considered. So let's see if I can kind of describe it here. We can start by removing all of these. Yeah, we've got them all out almost. And as I say, some of the parts are missing, but this will give you a good idea of what you're going to be looking at. So once you take those off and your clutch cover, this is your whole plate. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts are holding that in. So what you'll have to do is take these Allen head screws out. And once you've got those all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them taken out, then you can lift your cover off. Once you get the cover off, there will be a little tab. This is your shift piece here, and it will be over top of your assembly that's in there. We don't have one in this, but I'll show you some pictures so that you get an idea of what I'm talking about. So while I'm trying to explain the little shift mechanism to you, this is what I'm talking about. And this is going through your transmission as we're looking at it on the video. And this little hook piece is what actually hooks around the shift drum. And as you shift, it pulls the drum, pops up over, pulls the drum, pops up over, pulls the drum. So this is the little shift fork assembly that I'm speaking about. So you just lift this mechanism up, undo these 4 screws, and lift that piece out. And although this drawing is showing you for checking the position of the shift drum, you can see that the shift drum sits up quite a bit above the transmission case, so it's obvious as to what to take off, and that would be these 2 screws and then 2 screws there. So once you've undone all the 4 bolts on the top, the 2 on this end and the 2 on the other end, you can just reach in, lift that shift mechanism right up off of the transmission, and you'll pretty well be left with that in your hand. The other bearing support will come off the other end, just slide off, but this one usually will stay on with the clip there. And if you're not quite sure, you can always check with the manual drawing to see, and these are the 2 little tower pieces that we're speaking of here. Once that piece comes out and you have this cover off, there's a shift shaft that runs completely through here with the shift forks. And the shift rod is in here, so with this shift shaft through here and the shift rod, you can slide the shift rod right out here. As you can see here, as you're picking on the top of it here, you're able to just hold your shift forks and just slide this little rod straight out and pull it out, and out it will come. Reach in, pick that unit up and take it out. When you take them out, just slide your shift shaft back in it and keep them in place, and then you'll know which way they go back in. Now we're all clear. Now, as I said, when you pull the belt pulley off, it depends if you have a spacer on there for your primary bearing or not, depending on what you've been driving, riding. A belt drive or something might not have it on. But in any case, we'll pull that off so you can see. Okay, so there we are. So you take these out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we would go over here. You would just take a rubber hammer, something like this, and you would tap this here, and that will break the trap door loose. 5th gear will probably stay right here as it's pressed into this bearing, and you need some different tools to get that in and out, but by tapping this here, you can break the door loose. Once you've done that, by loosening these 5 bolts and you've given that a tap, that will break the seal here of this gasket, and the whole door will start to come out like this, and that's what we're looking at getting. And so once you had everything apart, this whole unit will just come out just like that, and you'll be able to remove the whole gear set assembly and take it right out. So we're going to put bearings in our 5th gear now, and I have new bearings here. I got them out of a product made by a company called Eastern, out of South Carolina, I think. It says Blackville, South Carolina. They have good products. I use them all the time. We're going to start a bearing in there, and we always on the numbered side up. Get it where I'm happy with it straight. And I've got a little tool that I made here. It's 5th gear bearing tool, and I have outer and inner on it, and they're marked with little marks on them, and that helps me set the depth. So we're going to put that there. Oh, it's going in there nice and snug. So I feel good about that. And we have to push it down far enough to get our oil seal in. So just going down to the mark. And there we are. And now it's pressed down in there to depth. And we're going to do the same on the back side. I love it when stuff comes well packaged and wrapped in a little protective paper. Shows me somebody cares. And now I'll use the other end of my tool with the marks on here. When I stick my tool in there, Gives you a really nice visual of whether you're straight or not. There we are. So we've got our little seal here, and we've got our 5th gear. We put that in the top there. So making sure that my tool is nice and clean, I'm just going to fit that down over that. A little dab of oil around the edge of the seal and the rubber. Just set that on there. Try to get it started in there a little bit. And then we'll just put our tool in down through the bearing. And that should do it. Just should be that just down flush. Just below the surface. So now our 5th gear is ready to go. Now we'll try and drive this bearing out. And it's a 15/16 socket that will go in there, and it's smaller than the hole. So you don't have to worry about it getting stuck in there or tearing any material off. Just take your time getting it started and it'll pop right through. You always have to drive it out from the solid side here. Don't try to drive it out the other way by putting something inside of it, because you'll just break the cap off it. And then you'll have to get the whole thing out of there. It'd be a bit of a chore. Here we go. And we've got a little Sonics bearing put in here. The Sonics bearing. Oil that up good. Try to start with just a light tap. Trying to get it centered in there, and you can kind of feel that it's biting. And then I've got this piece of aluminum that I'll usually put over something. By putting something over the surface of it, you're not going to hit in the center of it or try to destroy anything in there. That puts us right in, flush with the case. And now our bearing's in place. So we've got our main bearing in place here, and my camera wasn't working, but we used a small unit like this to put on here and then push the bearing in. Now we've got the C-clips here, which are supposed to be right in the middle here at 90 degrees or within a 45-degree angle. And that's where we are there. So now we're going to put our seal in. I'm going to put a little oil on it. And we'll try to start it in nice and straight. Just tap it in lightly there. We'll go. And we just want it flush with the surface there. There we go. Now we're going to try to put our 5th gear in place here. And I've got a little jig that I made up, which will fit right into the 5th gear on the back side of it. And that will lock it in. Get a lot of oil on the bearing surface. And on our 5th gear. And we're going to use this that we've made out of wheel hubs. I'm just going to slide it over and through the seal. Now you can always have the store-bought tools, but I can't afford all of those. And we'll put a couple of these on the end so we can hold it. Lock those two so we can hold it. We are in a threaded hole in the back side. And we'll start drawing our fifth gear in through. And this will pull our fifth gear through the main bearing without hurting the main bearing at all because we're supporting it in the center. Okay, looks like we're locked in there. I didn't need these ones on here. As it stayed in place, sometimes if it tries to turn in the back, it shouldn't, but we're double locked back there. So it should come right out. The other side. Sliding it back in would be the same procedure. We would be fitting our counter shaft into the counter shaft bearing, and the main shaft would be sliding right through fifth gear if you had not removed it. And then you would put these bolts in and torque them back up to the specs that they're supposed to be. Set your shift forks in here. Put your shift rod through here to hold the shift forks. Put your top unit on, lift this up. There's a little arm lever here, lift this up. Slide your 4 bearing position holders into there, torque them down. Slide your cover back on. And then you just got the transmission in and out. So it's not that big a deal. I didn't have to disassemble this one, but I hope that I've put enough in this video to give you an idea of how to do it and to replace the bearings and such or gear in your transmission and set it up. Okay, so the biggest thing is just taking your time. You really need your manual if you're not familiar with these 4-speeds, and the manual will help show you exactly where it's got to go and answer all your questions. As I often say, you need to have that. You can't second guess it. You can try to fire some things in there, but you'll never know for sure. If you stick it in there and it's not right, it'll be a very, very, very expensive venture. So for the few dollars for a manual, that's what you should do. Okay, so if you enjoyed this video on working on your 5-speed cluster there, like, subscribe, ring the bell, leave me some comments, tell other people about our channel. We're growing and it's only thanks to you all out there, and I appreciate it every day. So stick around for next week and see what we got coming in the mix.